Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to share 4 tips to help you snag that teaching interview. Now you might be wondering, Susan, it's been a long time since you've interviewed for a position, and while that may have been true, that's not true anymore. I have actually been interviewing this summer, and while I don't have news to share with you just yet, I think there's some exciting opportunities coming up in the future that I can't wait to share with you. If you are a member of my email list, you will be the first to know, and you'll also find out kind of how this YouTube channel is going to shift if I take a classroom position next year. Either way, I am so excited, and in this video, I really wanted to share with you 4 tips that I've kind of put together for having successful interviews. Some of them are going to be reminders, others might be new tips for you. So if you are interviewing this summer, I am wishing you the best of luck, and let's dive in to these tips. If you're ready to hear them, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's go. Tip number 1 is to bring a brief portfolio. Now, I put brief there because I don't know about you, but I live up here in Massachusetts, and I know that in some places right now, teachers kind of, they're searching for teachers desperately, but up in Massachusetts, it is still a highly desired job, and for every position, there are still many, many, many qualified people who are applying for each job. So it is still a very competitive market here. So you still want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward, and I would say that even if you are in a position where they are desperately seeking teachers. Also, that means that your administrators, the other teachers doing interviews, they are very, very busy. So this is my opinion, but long gone are the days where you bring in like an inch or 2-inch big portfolio binder. Nobody has the time to look through all that. So I wanted to walk you through the brief portfolio that I made. And I also love creating a portfolio because it really helps you do all of the prep work before the interview as you compile all of this information, right? It gets your brain ready for the interview because it's really gonna go over a lot of the topics that you might get asked in your interview questions. Like I said, I wouldn't opt for a big binder at this point in time. Instead, I tried to really take all of my knowledge and put it in a small binder. So I actually got this little presentation book on Amazon. You can find them at CVS or Walgreens or Staples. I'll link mine down below just so you can see what it looks like. But it's pretty thin, and it only has 12 plastic sheets inside for you to print out and put what you need. You also, in that front page there's a clear, or on the front cover of it, there's a clear sleeve so you can put in a cover photo. So that is what I chose to bring. And I only brought one. You can use it, as a crutch when you're answering questions if you want to show something, but then I bought it with the purpose of leaving it there for them if they wanted to take a look after. And at the end of my interview, one of the teachers was like, "Oh, I love these," and they really wanted to look around in between interviewing me and another candidate who was coming in after me. So they could really take a look at it, and it really just helps emphasize some of the questions that you were asked and maybe addresses some that weren't asked. So here was my cover page that I put on the front. It just says Susan Jones Teaching Portfolio 2010 to 2013. I happen to have this picture of me reading The Smart Cookie, so I just threw that on there, but any picture of you I think should work. And then when you flipped inside it, the first page said, "A peek inside my classroom." And this is going to be where a large bulk of the information was listed. So in this section, what I did is I really took each part of my classroom and my teaching and my philosophy, and I put it into bullet points. So let me show you what I mean. Here we have the classroom setup page. I tried to find 3 or 4 quick pictures for each of these pages. Of course, I've been in education for over 12 years, so I did have a lot to choose from. If you are a student teacher and you have pictures that you took in your class, feel free to use them. Or you can find pictures on the internet that really emphasize what you are talking about. I would, of course, give them credit, so people don't think that this is your classroom per se, but you can say, "This is exactly what I would do." Or you would list out in a bullet point, "Here's what I would want to do, see this example here." So basically like your inspiration. So up at the top, I have a dedicated space to enjoy reading and get quality books in students' hands, where I really show our classroom library. I talk about having individual book bins housed here for students to fill with decodables, shared poems, and student choice books. I talk about how I like to have students purposely placed in groups to emphasize collaborative learning. I've always used collaborative supplies in the past to promote community. And then I also just talk a little bit about our walls being uncluttered, and all items placed are meant to aid in or celebrate student learning. Again, that was something very important to me. You are going to have different things that are important to you in the way you like to set up your classroom. So again, these are just examples of what I have in mind. And then last at the bottom, we have bulletin boards ready to display student work and a writing center filled with scaffolded writing activities. That just gives them a sneak peek into my classroom. Then I went over classroom routines. I mentioned how every day begins with our morning meeting to focus on respect and building relationships within the classroom. I said how we greet one another each and every day and we read a morning message with some quick review. I happened to have actual pictures of my older morning messages that I would write on the board every day, so I threw those in there. I explained how lessons follow the gradual release model, and I like to use visual directions to promote student independence. And I just have an example of a slide I've used in the past. Down at the bottom, I talk a little bit about accountable talk because I put an emphasis on respectful listening and speaking routines in my classroom. And then I just explained that we use sentence stems like this to really discuss learning in a meaningful way, and that positive reinforcement is key for me. Then I dive into a little bit about literacy, math, and writing. So here's my page on literacy instruction, and this is where you get a chance to, again, highlight those bullet points where you are going to talk about what's important to you, what you've learned, and how you would teach a literacy instruction in your classroom. So I, of course, talk about a strong emphasis on explicit phonics instruction and phonemic awareness. I explain how I teach sight words using the heart word method. I talk about differentiation, how it occurs in both small group settings and with individual partner activities. I explain that I use literacy centers that support the science of reading and help with student motivation. And then also I put there that we use appropriate decodable text to promote fluency. And then on the bottom, I did want to mention a part about vocabulary and comprehension. So I explain how I pick purposeful read alouds to teach comprehension and vocabulary. And then I try to incorporate students' likes as much as I can with our read alouds to really increase engagement. And then I put a little bullet point at the end about teaching tier 2 vocabulary. For math, I talk about how we start every single math block with a math talk. I also just explained that I created scaffolded math talk slides to review every different math skill, and I showed this little example. I explained that when I'm teaching math skills in a unit, I like to follow the CRA method, which is something I've talked about many times on this channel, and how I put a big focus on conceptual learning over procedural. Then I explained that I use math centers, again, that are engaging and concrete, that lead towards student independence, and that I like to use a lot of partner review games in my classroom. And I do this for a few different reasons, but I also like that it touches upon social emotional learning, like taking turns, winning, losing, and helping one another. Then for writing instruction, I talk about how I have a strong focus on how to write and expand sentences in first grade. We talk about sentence structure and how I want students to begin editing their work at the sentence level. I talk about the writing process and how I want students to brainstorm, plan, write, and edit and revise before we publish. And then I also talk about how we focus on making handwriting fluent at the beginning of the year to really free up brain space for more challenging skills. And then I do have a little mention here about inventive spelling is relied upon, but as students learn phonetic patterns, they are expected to use them in their writing. Again, on each of these 3 pages, these are my personal teaching philosophies around teaching math, reading, and writing. So if I am interviewing at a position at a school, I want to make sure that the school I'm going into, I want to make sure that we align in our beliefs on this. So this is just my place to kind of put it all out there. Here's how I would teach it and maybe a little bit about why I would teach it that way. And then I have this last page right here, which is just my professional achievements. Again, if you are a brand new teacher, you might not have too many professional achievements in teaching, but you might have some in other jobs. This is a great place to really highlight some of those fun things that are on your resume that you want to call the attention to. So here I explain how I presented to groups of over 1,000 teachers. The presentation I did was meaningful math strategies, so I just put that there. I explained how I host free informational webinars over the summer. I listed again just a few different topics that I have done recently. And then I also talked about how I presented at numerous Teachers Pay Teachers conferences to discuss marketing strategies and co-funded and hosted a conference designed for high-performing teacher authors. Now, those last 2 there aren't exactly related to teaching in the classroom, but they do show a few different things. They show that I am creative and willing to speak in front of a crowd. I very much enjoy things and like to, I made a conference out of it. I worked with a friend and I'm just highly motivated. So I think that was important to list there. But again, you'll want to pick things from your resume resume that you really want to highlight. Those pages right there are really going to be the bulk of the portfolio. And then at the end, all I did was put this slide right here, which just explains my recent trainings that I've taken, which are the MZ Orton Gillingham Plus, the letters training, and the Simple View of Writing by the Reading League. And then after that, I just put all the certificates, just my completed certificates. I put them in there just for them to see when I completed them and how I did. So I just added that there. And then at the end, I put this little slide where I just said, thank you. I would be so honored to be a part of the team. I hope that was a helpful example of a portfolio that I have actually used. I really wanted the portfolio not to just be a list of achievements or, letters of recommendation, because you're going to give that anyway to your interview. I always have to apply on SchoolSpring, and so my letters of recommendation, and I have uploaded, some exemplary observations, those are on there. With this portfolio, I just wanted it to be a quick little handout for them to see what it would actually be like in my classroom. Since they can't, hop into my classroom and see what it would be like, I wanted to just give them something first to be able to, again, kind of feel like they could understand how I would teach the students at their school. And I hope you can see how helpful that would be preparing that to get ready for those interview questions, which is going to be tip number 2. So tip number 2 is to know your answers in and out for the 10 main categories of interview questions. Pretty much any teacher interview that you go to are going to ask variations of the same types of questions. Now, there might be some oddball questions that are very specific to the school you're interviewing at, but for the most part, there are going to be 10 main categories of questions that you should know in and out. So let's go over the 10 main categories. First is tell us about yourself. You want this to be brief, to the point, and education related. So you don't want to take up too much time here, but this is a good place to highlight things that you've done and kind of how you came to be in the position you are right now. Number 2 are classroom management questions. Now, they might not straight up ask you, what's your classroom management style? They might ask you a different type of question that they really want to know what your classroom management style is. So again, know what it is in and out. They will likely ask you about both math and literacy, so you want to be prepared to answer using current research and how you would effectively teach your students in both math and literacy. Number 5 is challenges. How do you handle challenges in the classroom? This might be posed in a very general way, like how would you handle challenges in the classroom? Or it might be posed as how have you handled a challenging behavior in the classroom, or how would you handle a challenge when a lesson went wrong? There could be kind of a few different ways that this comes up, but what they're looking for is they want to see how you would tackle a problem head on and fix it. Number 6 is teacher collaboration. Many schools I've worked in the past, and this is something that's very important to me, is I want to be able to work in a school where I collaborate with my teammates. That's just something I love doing. Again, other schools might be more of a kind of close your door and you're on your own, which is fine if that works for some people, but usually there's a question about collaborating with teammates. Number 7 is social emotional learning. Especially in the past few years, administrators and other teachers really want to know how you are incorporating these SEL techniques in your classroom. Number 8 is going to be technology. How do you use technology in your classroom? What do you like to do? What have you done in the past? What would you do in the future? So on and so forth. Number 9 is how well you involve parents and the community into your classroom. And number 10 is going to be assessment related. How do you use assessments to drive growth and data in your classroom? When preparing for your interview, you can search online and look for common teacher interview questions. You will find lists of 30 questions, 50 questions, 20 questions. You'll find tons and tons that you could go through every single one if you wanted to. But after looking through a bunch of those myself, they again kind of fall into those 10 main categories, unless it's something, again, super specific to your school. So really think about how you would answer all 10 of those. I made this little practice sheet here for you to kind of brain dump some ideas or even write down answers to the questions you might be asked. They do have some little like probing questions within each one for you to think about. And again, that might help take your ideas out of your head, write them down on paper as you're preparing for your interview. So I will link that down in the description in case you want to check it out. All right, tip number 3 is answer the questions aloud. So after you've kind of thought about all 10 of those categories, what you really want to highlight in an answer and maybe taken some notes, that's always helpful for me. Again, taking it out of my brain, writing it down, and then kind of forming it into an answer. Now you want to practice saying it aloud. And it does feel silly, and I know this is a very common tip because it's common because it's very effective. You really need to hear yourself say the answer. I have heard myself, even when I was practicing just alone, I would ramble and ramble and ramble, and it kind of taught me where that was happening so I could stop it and make it much more concise. So I did practice all of these answers aloud numerous times. If you feel comfortable enough and you have a partner or a mom or dad or somebody who wants to, be a mock interviewer with you, go ahead. I did not do that with Parker because I wouldn't take it seriously. So I just did it by myself, but that's totally up to you. There is actually this TikToker, her name is Neely. This is what the video looks like, but she actually has you practice a mock interview, and it sounds so silly, but I actually did this with her video. And again, it was really helpful. So she'll ask one of the basic questions, and then she gives you time, and she kind of looks at you, and she's like, okay, cool. And then you just answer it. I went ahead and paused it, and I would answer my question, try to make it more concise, and then get ready for the next one. So I will link that exact video down below. She also has tons of teacher interview tips that, again, are very helpful. So check her out. And tip number 4 is to do your research. Now, maybe that should have been tip number 1, because realistically, if you are applying to a school, I hope you already did your research and you have found that you would be a good fit for that classroom and for that school environment. Even if you are a new teacher and you feel like you're desperate to go find jobs, you do want to find one that really is going to align with your principles. The first 5 years of teaching are so hard, and teachers so commonly burn out that unless you have a nice supportive system of colleagues and administrators around you, it can be really, really hard. It might be even more difficult than it naturally is anyway. If you're a teacher and you've been doing a ton of work in the science of reading lately, but you applied to a school that still follows balanced literacy, that might not be a great fit for you unless you're going in there to, put up the good fight and fight for what your students need and what you think their students need. Again, you might not want to apply there. That might make your life a little bit more difficult than you want it to be. And think about that with each and everything. Think about how they are approaching learning at K through 2 levels. Does it look like, or does it sound like something that you would fit in with? Does your philosophy fit in there? Does your style fit in there? So do your research. Another great way to do this research is to actually sub at that school. Now, many of you might not be able to do that, but if you are in the position to actually sub, pick up a few days in the school, see how the school runs and see the environment, that's going to give you a really great idea of how well you would fit in there, and it's also going to introduce that school to you. You'll be able to add a face to the name when you go in and interview, and again, you'll be able to kind of quickly see what your team would be like. What are the other teachers in 1st grade or 2nd grade like? Do you think you would be a good fit? Do you like the way that they teach there? Do you like the curriculum they're using? If you have the opportunity to sub, it can really be a great way to find the perfect school for you. All right, so there you have 4 of my top tips for interviewing for a teacher position. Number 1 was to create a brief portfolio that really allows administrators to see what your classroom would look like. Number 2 was know the ins and outs of all 10 of the main categories of questions, and don't forget I have that free sheet for you to brainstorm down below. Number 3 was practice your answers out loud, and number 4 was do your research. Now, after you go out there and nail the interview, they're probably going to call you back and ask you to do a model lesson in one of their classrooms. So in next week's video, I'm going to walk you through the exact model lesson that I did in a 1st grade classroom. So if you're excited about that, be sure to check into next week's video as well. If you are out there interviewing, I am wishing you the best of luck. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments and I will try my best to answer them. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. See you in the next one. Bye.